Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it is Tuesday, about 6:25 a.m. A little bit of a late start. I think I have caught a bit of a cold from traveling, and so I'm a little more tired than normal. Tried to get some extra sleep, took some NyQuil, but it's just a cold, and when it's just a cold, we don't take days off. We don't rest. We power through it. We power through it. So now that being said, not a lot going on this week. Patches tomorrow. Um, I'm looking forward to playing some more games on my main, hopefully at some point in between various meetings or after work and stuff like that. It'll be the World's patch, which will be interesting. Yeah, so that'll be fun. Let's see, what other announcements for you guys? Friday, there will not be a Walk the Dog, because Friday instead I will stream. I'm going to stream Friday and Sunday this week, because Friday afternoon, or Friday evening, I have a friend coming over. This guy has been my friend since we were in 6th grade. We've known each other since 2nd grade, friends since 6th grade. He was the one that, my very first house in 2008, he was my roommate, that allowed me to actually even be able to afford a house, which was really helpful. But since I moved to Riot, he and we've spoken, but we haven't actually seen each other pretty much since I went to Riot. So it's been quite a few years. So it'll be nice to catch up with him. That'll be a cool weekend. But so Friday and Saturday, we're going to hang out. So that'll be fun. But yeah, so Friday morning instead I'll do stream. That way you guys don't miss out on any stream content. And yeah, that'll be that. Okay. Sorry, like I said, I'm just tired. Like I said, it's such a weird week because normally I'd want to be working like crazy, but not that much stuff to do. I think today I've got a couple meetings, a couple play tests, and then the one big thing I want to do is all the splash arts are finally ready for set 15. So I will start gathering all that stuff up and start prepping the PvE rundown slides. So that'll be fun. Because I have to do that during the summer break. Because I believe Sloan is heading to Europe for, the World's cast and then set 15 reveal and stuff like that. So that'll be cool for him. But that means he won't be around right after to do the PvE rundown. So, gotta get that done beforehand. So, yeah. Okay, that's enough jibber jabbering. Let's talk about questions. All right. How much do you feel aesthetics, how much do game feel and aesthetics contribute to a game's success? So, this is stuff like, how much do the feeling, the visuals, the impact. Now, first off, as a bias, I tend to be more mechanics focused than aesthetics focused. For example, we're working on set 18 right now, and we're starting to get that initially going, and I'm just sort of like, yeah, pick a theme, we'll make it work, it'll be fine. I usually trust people that are a little bit more creative, like Giovanni or our art team or our set leads. I usually trust them to figure out the theme, and I'm just like, I'll make it work, right? When we did a music set, it was sort of like, okay, whatever, we'll make a music set work, not a big deal. So it's not really my area of expertise. That being said, though, does it contribute? Of course, right? I mean, set 10 is actually probably the best example of this, right? Set 10 from a mechanics point of view is solid. It's got things like Heartsteel and KDA, which at the time was really, really good. There were a couple misses in there, like Country. And then if you're not a Chosen fan, you could argue that the mechanic was kind of bleh. So from a mechanics standpoint, it's B. It's a solid B tier. Heartsteel maybe puts it up to low A. But why was that set so wildly popular in East or Western regions? Well, turns out those aesthetics and that music system pretty darn good, right? Like the team that pulled off all the music stuff for our set did such an amazing job that it contributed. But on the flip side of the coin, it's like you can have a set with pretty middling aesthetics, like say set 9. It's like, yep, it sure is Runeterra, woo, but can actually be pretty popular. So I was thinking about this question as I wrote it down last night, and think of it like you're baking a cake, right? And your question is, how much does flour contribute to the success of the cake? How much does the flour quality contribute to the success of a cake? And it's like, well, yeah, it makes a difference, but it's also just one ingredient, right? How much does good frosting contribute to a cake? I mean, yeah, good amount, right? But each thing is not inherently a cake in and of itself. So to me, it's important to have good aesthetics. It's important to have something that makes players excited. But especially with a game like TFT, aesthetics are basically like mostly the window dressing. I mean, again, set 10 kind of being the big exception because that music system provided such a big, deep, replayable aesthetics. But overall, it's sort of like, well, what's set 14? Cyber City? That looks cool. I'll try it out. And then once you're in there, it's like, well, yeah, you kind of just play the game. And then the mechanics either carry or don't carry the set, or the champ design, stuff like that, So overall, again, to me, the answer is it contributes and it's important, but it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? And every piece of the puzzle matters quite a bit. You need good people thinking about that. But it's not like a key thing. And to put it differently, if a game has amazing aesthetics, but is mechanically not very good, that game will die, right? Like that is a dead video game. But on the flip side of the coin, there are games with horrible aesthetics, but really, really solid gameplay that will live on forever, right? My best example for this is always Binding of Isaac. Binding of Isaac might have one of the worst aesthetics of all time. It is so unapproachable, so weird, and even like once you start to try to understand it, it's like revolting, where it's like religion and this kid rebelling against his creepy old mom. Like, oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. You have, piles of shit everywhere. Like, one of the worst aesthetics of all time. But I've also played that game for like 800 hours because the mechanics and the gameplay are so dang good, right? So, now, would that game have been way better with some actual aesthetics? Yeah, of course. I think so. I think probably could have doubled his sales. And I know there's, thankfully, not enough people actually watch this podcast that'll get this. But someone on the internet will actually talk about how, like, no, the aesthetics of Binding of Isaac were great. They were not great. Don't listen to anyone who says that. And anyone who says that is immediately invalidating their opinion on pretty much anything. It is not a good aesthetic. But, yeah, again, game's still really good. So, again, important piece of the puzzle. I'm glad we do it. But it's not like the key ingredient. When it's really, really good, it can certainly make your cake amazing. See set 10. But you still need solid gameplay and mechanics first. Otherwise, the rest doesn't matter. So, that's my opinion. Now, again, I say that with bias because I'm a mechanics and gameplay guy. So, there you go. Okay. This is a question that was good because of the stream. All right, there's 6+ players alive on stage 5. What is the game design impact on that? And is that actually a problem or is it a good thing? What does that mean? Okay, so Obviously, during stream this weekend, I complained a lot because it happened. And what would happen is I'd be 100 health at 4-1. There'd be 3 people at the bottom of the lobby at about 30 health. And no one, the people at the bottom of the lobby would keep winning. And the people at the top of the lobby would keep losing. And so eventually by about 5-2, it's like the bottom of the lobby's still at like 20. Top of the lobby's now at like 50. And because no one dies, you bleed out. And it's not great. So as much as I complain, though, let's talk about it, right? Because TFT is a game where the early game is where you have the least amount of agency. Not saying you have none, but, you can't press reroll, you can't spend your money. And if you don't, let's say you have a bad opener or items that don't match or anything like that, you can't really do a whole lot. Now, early game is still important. We want people to try to win the early game, right? The worst state of TFT is when everyone's just open forwarding. And we're actually pretty close to that right now, which is really not great. But what that usually is a sign of is that once a comp is put together, its power is far ahead of anything else that you could hobble together, right? And I was kind of ranting about this a little bit on stream, but guide comps, their power level is far enough ahead of non-guide comps that you can't really innovate, and it becomes more important to sort of put all the pieces together than it is to play suboptimally. And so in that state, what's happening is the combinatorics of the items and the traits and the characters are probably too high. And it's usually a sign that you're getting too much multiplicative value off some combinatoric, right? So an example here, I actually think one of the biggest contributors of this right now is Kraken's Fury. Because the combination of the high health pool of Exotech and 6 Vanguard, because 6 Vanguard is just gain a giant shield of health. 7 Exotech is gain a bunch of health, right? You have massive, massive HP pools, sometimes almost as high as Bruiser, but with all the defense, it's like you have the HP, but you also have a ton of tankiness, which is wild. So you have all this HP, and then you are able to play an item, Kraken's Fury, which scales your output to such a state that if you get there, right, like a Kog'Maw or a Zeri that has, 100 stacks on their Kraken's Fury, is doing pretty insane amounts of damage, right? And so that is actually one of the core problems. And it's like, well, how does a brand who's balanced around sort of a consistent output of spellcasts supposed to keep up with the 100 stack Ginsu? And you're like, well, you're not supposed to, right? If the Kog'Maw can get that high, that's why he gets to output that damage, right? It's his Archangels, right? But Archangels has the risk in that you need to build a comp that's stable enough. And it's too easy to do right now. It's too easy to do with the Vanguard or the Exotech lines. So what that's basically saying is, there are certain comps in the game right now that you don't have to worry about getting to, everything before you get to that point where you've put together the guide comp is irrelevant. As long as you get there, the payoff will be good. And really, the thing that happens right now, especially in the current meta, is, let's say the Kog'Maw reroller, the 7 Exotech player, and one other one, they lose streak, get the items they force their bis, right? Because like the difference between a Kog'Maw with a Deathblade versus a Kog'Maw with a Kraken's Fury is pretty big. It's pretty big, which isn't great. They get their BIS, they put it all together, and then really the only people they lose to is each other, because that cap is so much higher. And so what that generally means from a game design standpoint is those caps are just too good. Now, something like AMP is a little closer to healthy, but still actually has the same problem, right? AMP is at least, well, you got to go 9, you got to find a 5 cost, you got to put it all together, and then it reaches a high cap. But like Vanguard and Exotech are just like, just hit, it'll be fine. So what it usually means is, in this case, it's a sign that the balance of the end states are off and that BIS has become too important, right? The item system, we've over the years tried to make the item system more flexible, where it's like, yeah, if you don't have a Kraken's, you can build the Deathblade, and you'll be like 3% worse, but not that much worse. But that's not the case. And that's why, of all the item reworks we did, Kraken is the one I had the most worries about. And it just, yeah, I wish Kraken had just been time instead of auto attacks. But now keep in mind, if it was time, we would actually have a similar problem right now, right? So you can't put all the blame on Kraken's Fury. Kraken's Fury is only part of the equation. Let's say it was Archangels, right? If it was Archangels, though, for AD, what you'd actually be seeing is a couple more AD lines might be playable, right? Like 6 Vanguard with a Jhin reroll could be more playable because Jhin could actually stack the Kraken. So, you know, it just wouldn't be as hard bound to the attack speed people like Pogma and Zeri. And you'd still have the same problem of the front line, right? And this is one of the challenges of balancing TFT, is that people will look for one thing to be like, that's the balance problem. But it's actually a combination of things because everything's linked. So, anyway, I kind of wandered off topic there a little bit, but TLDR here is that people being able to play that like full loss streak into convert and then have their HP never really be at risk is usually a sign that the power level of the comp they're putting together is too high and too consistent, and it means you can't reward flex play, right? Like this is a meta where someone could probably hit Masters by hard forcing Exotech or hard forcing Kog'Maw, and that's not really a good thing. So, yeah. All right. What's the most common thing you notice junior designers struggle with? Okay. There's a lot of things I could answer here because junior designers struggle with a lot of things. An example is, I've told you guys this story before, but you know, when my boss was like, we don't make games for you more, we make games for our players. The ability to empathize towards somebody that isn't you is pretty tough for a lot of junior designers, especially a lot of, you know, smart junior designers that are sort of like, I know better and I should make it this way. That's one example. Or really, hilariously enough nowadays, there's something about like work ethic that I could go into. Well, you know, about how sometimes if you want to do something great, you got to put in a little extra effort. Although that's not junior designers so much as it is just kids. But I think when I was, again, writing this down and thinking about my answer, I think there's one really obvious one that junior designers struggle with this immensely, but even senior designers that I've seen struggle with this a lot. And hilariously enough, I think at Riot, it has been one of the keys to my success, is that I've sort of mastered this. But the best way I can illustrate this is if you hand Mario Maker to a human being, right, what kind of level are they going to make? Well, they're probably going to make a really complicated level where it's like, you know, you see the ones on YouTube, right, where it's like, execute these insane series of jumps, or this crazy complicated thing where you have to like bounce off this and get the key here and insert it, you know, just really overcomplicated stuff. And that's because when people are designing things, a common reason for designing is that people want to show how clever they are. They want to show how clever they are, and so they think they need to make the most complicated things out there. And the other thing is that, like, video games have been around for 40 years. So there's a lot of known good out there. There's a lot of, here's the best way to make a menu, or here's the best system for how to activate a certain thing, or here's the best way to control randomness in your video game, right? If you've been playing enough games and researching games over the years, you can find a lot of really good solutions out there. But junior designers are like, no, but I have to show that my solution is the best solution in the world. I have to show that I'm clever. I have to show that I'm worthy of a promotion. And so what you end up with is a lot of overcomplicated designs that really aren't that great. Another common one is, like, I feel like we see this with League a little bit, is like, I've run into a problem. So the way I solve this problem is add more to the champion or add more to the kit. It's like, well, I made this cool trait called KDA where they stand in hexes. But while they do that, I don't know what stats to give them, so I give them every stat. But then if I do that, it's only good playable as a support champion. So I add a multiplier to KDA. And then all of a sudden you have, like, KDA with bonus hexes with every stat that doubles if you're a KDA, but doubles if you're in the special hexes. It's like, whoa. That's a lot going on here. And so the high level here is that a lot of designers, but especially junior designers, struggle with the KISS concept. Keep it simple, stupid. If you can't describe your thing in one sentence, it's probably too complicated. So, let's take a look at Zach, right? Like, I think Zach is an example of a good 5 cost, and it's like, well, what does Zach do? Buy blobs, make him bigger. Cool. That sounds fun. What does Garen do? Get mods to add traits to champions. Cool. Pretty simple, right? Like, a good, elegant design can often be described like this. The other story I often tell in this concept that I think really drives this point home is my daughter was, like, I want to say 6. I could have that number wrong. The Wii U was out, and there were 2 games she could play, okay? Splatoon and Yoshi's Woolly World. Now, on the surface, if you asked a bunch of people, which game do you think my daughter is going to have more fun with? I think everyone would kind of go, well, for a 6-year-old who's that young, Splatoon's kind of a shooter, it's PvP, but Yoshi's Woolly World, you can take your time. It's got that cute aesthetic. She's going to like Yoshi's Woolly World, right? Nope. Couldn't have been further from the truth. Why? Well, in Yoshi's Woolly World, what do you have to do? You have to move the character left and right. You have to jump. And your jump has a multitude of buttons, right? It's like jump and flutter jump and bounce off enemies and stuff like that. You have the tongue. So not only do you have to jump on enemies, you got to eat them. Then when you use the tongue, you got to make eggs. You got to be able to throw eggs. And you got to collect a lot. There's a lot going on in Yoshi's Woolly World. And the core control system, it's actually pretty complicated. Now compare that to Splatoon. Shoot people. Shoot people with ink. If you run out, get more ink. That's it. That's the whole game. There's different weapons and things like that, but at the highest level, all she had to do was shoot people and then absorb them, and that's it. And it's very simple and it's very elegant. And so she was able to get into it pretty easily. It's very approachable, very simple. And then there's a lot of depth from there, right? Whereas again, the first level of Yoshi's Woolly World doesn't have that. It's actually not very approachable. So a lot of junior designers really struggle with this concept, and they just want to add more to the game, make it more complex. And it's you've got to get that core really simple and elegant first. I can't stress it enough. And I think I've always told this story as well, but one of my first projects at Riot was emotes. When I joined the team, emotes had actually been in development for about a year already, which is wild. And the emote system they had proposed was like, well, the way you get emotes is you buy them in packs of 5 that are random. And when you get these 5, let's say you got the Amumu emote that looks like he's crying, you would go to a specific champion, like let's say Jinx, and you would apply that sticker. And so now Jinx can use that emote, but no one else can. And then if you got multiple copies, you could re-roll those into a random emote. And then if you wanted to take an emote off of somebody, you would need a remover, which would convert into dust. And it was like this whole complicated thing of like, you're telling me the player has to like figure this all out and set all this up, and oh my God, it sounds awful. And so they asked me to take a look at it and propose something. And a day later, I went, hey guys, you know that ping wheel the players already know how to use? Let's put emotes on it. Let's use that. Let's just ping emotes. That's it. It's a different wheel. You ping. Players already know how to use it. You put your emotes there. You're good to go. And then I threw on a little bit of a thing where it was like, and just for funsies, you can like break emotes, which most people don't even know this exists. But it was to solve the problem of like spamming emotes and stuff like that. But overall, at its core, it was like ping wheel for emotes. That's it. Not revolutionary, not, but it's elegant. And guess what? That's what we shipped. We shipped it like 3 or 4 months later. Emotes finally got out the door. They were a nice little bonus revenue for for League. Small amounts. It wasn't like gangbusters, but we never expected it to be. And I mean, emotes are still around. They're still a thing that gets used. That's it. So, but I think the junior designer trap was to try to make this complicated, clever system. And the senior designer goes, guys, it's simple. Focus on the game. This is not something we need to be innovating on. So, all right, I've been jabbing a lot. Since I only have a little bit more time, I'll just do this question. How are units' base AD determined? Okay, so we have a general framework for what base AD should be, right? So like, let's say a brand new set designer who doesn't know much about balance is setting up their game. We have numbers that are in place as a starting point. So for example, a 1-cost mage, 30, a 1-cost AD dealer, 40, a 1-cost tank, 50, and then, like a 4-cost tank is probably like 65, a 4-cost backliner AD is like 50, a 4-cost backliner mage is 40. These are the starting points. And so when they are setting up their set, they can put those numbers in. Then from there, it's about making sure that the output matches the fantasy. So for example, let's say you have a Vex, 4-cost Vex, and she had 40 AD, and you're playing Vex, and at the end of the fight, you look over at your damage meter, and you did 7,000 damage, and 800 of that was physical, and a bunch more was magic, and a bunch more was true damage because she had a gunblade, whatever. And you look at that, and you're like, that's weird. 800 physical damage, but she's a magic user. So what you do is you go, okay, actually, you know what, for Vex, I'm going to lower that AD even further, down to like 30, so that I can spike her magic damage up a little bit, because I want there to be very little orange on that kit. Or another example might be, hey, I gave Braum 70 AD because he has a 0.6 attack speed. That way he can actually end fights. But man, he's like kind of hitting hard, so we're going to shrink that down. So after you have the initial framework in, then you do balance assessments to make sure the champion feels the way you want it to. And what we've learned over time is that the actual number is kind of irrelevant. It's more just does the character output the way you want them to, right? So do they feel right? Things like that. And so we've had champions before. They're supposed to be magic users that actually do too much physical damage, which is why we've been shrinking a lot of ADs. Kobuko is a good example of this, right? Where it's like, for a while during our test, Kobuko had like 50 AD because he's a 5 cost and it made sense. But instead, if you give him that passive where it's like on hit, do bonus magic damage, he feels like an AP user, because we didn't want him, like, he wasn't supposed to be a Titans user. He was supposed to be a Death Cap user, right? And so a lot of it is like also leaning into the item fantasy of the champion. It's like, if I want Kobuko to be using Death Cap plus BT plus JG, right? Well, then 50 AD isn't going to do that. 50 AD is going to tell me to put Titans or Giant Slayer. So instead, I lean into the AP scalers to make sure to try to make his items the same. And the same goes for spells, right? Like, let's take a champion like Kindred. If I have 50 AD and the spell does 400% damage, that's going to be not a Shojin user. But if I have 40 AD and the spell does 700% damage, that's somebody you want casting that spell as much as possible, because the auto attacks relative to the spell are going to be weaker, and so you want that spell to come out more. That's a Shojin's user, right? And so having that base AD match the itemization you want is also a determining factor of that base AD. Now, for some champions, and I think the person asking this question listed some examples of like, why is this guy 35 and why is this guy 30? It's like, well, at the end of the day, sometimes that number may not matter, especially for casters. Like, should that caster who's at 35 be at 30? Probably, to be honest. It's probably one of those things that like fell below the cracks of this is important enough to fix, right? Like, if that 3-cost caster is 35, is that really breaking the game? It's fine. I never got around to changing it to 30. So that's kind of the gist of it. All right, I've been jabbing along too long. I think part of it is that the head cold's making me lightheaded, and so I'm just kind of talking on autopilot a little bit here. So sorry about that. Let's see. One other fun thing is that I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing for Worlds. I'm not going to Texas. I can't travel. So we'll see if I do anything else. That'll be fun. I'm sure we'll do something, though. Yeah. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to go shower, get breakfast, get to work, do stuff, get ready for summer break. Good times. Okay. If you watch this far, just know that I appreciate you guys. You guys are the real fans. I appreciate that. I do stuff for you guys. So, all right, that's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.